Florida, the state sold as paradise for retirees and dreamers, now leads the nation in a housing crisis so extreme, the average homeowner pays over $6,000 a year for insurance alone, nearly 4 times the U.S. norm. Rents in college towns like Gainesville have surged 35% since 2020. Retirees in the villages now face insurance bills of $6,500, forcing impossible choices between medicine and shelter. Middle-class workers, nurses, and teachers are being pushed out of their own communities by costs they can't control. How did 10 Florida cities become the epicenter of America's unaffordable future? And what's happening behind closed doors that even lifelong locals never saw coming? A retired couple in the villages sits at their kitchen table, bills spread out between them. Their annual homeowner's insurance premium has climbed from $4,500 last year to $6,500 in 2024, a 40% jump in just 12 months. Their monthly budget, once steady and predictable, now feels like a puzzle with missing pieces. Social Security checks cover the basics, but every increase eats away at what's left for food, medication, and the little pleasures that once defined retirement. This isn't just a bad year. Local reports show premiums rising 30 to 40% for many residents, with some forced to cut back on prescriptions or skip meals to keep their homes insured. The promise of a worry-free life in the sunshine has been replaced by anxiety over the next renewal notice. Many retirees here chose the villages because it offered stability, low taxes, strong community, predictable expenses. But the reality in 2025 is a constant shuffle between non-negotiable costs. HOA fees have also crept up, but it's the insurance bill that lands hardest. Florida's risk profile, storms, litigation, insurer exits, translates directly to homeowners' wallets. For seniors living on fixed incomes, there's no easy way to absorb a $2,000 spike. Some couples now ration medication or delay doctor visits, hoping nothing goes wrong before the next Social Security deposit arrives. Others quietly list their homes, knowing that selling means leaving behind friends and routines built over years. In the villages, the housing crisis isn't abstract. It's a daily calculation. How long can we hold on? And what are we willing to give up to stay? Downtown Gainesville, once a haven for students and young professionals, now feels out of reach for many who call the city home. Median rent has climbed 35% since 2020, according to Zillow, an apartment list, pushing even modest apartments above $1,600 a month. For graduate students, the math rarely adds up. Stipends remain stuck at pre-pandemic levels, leaving some to juggle multiple roommates or crash on friends' couches between semesters. But the squeeze doesn't stop at the campus gates. Service workers, baristas, retail clerks, hospital orderlies face a different kind of calculation. Take Maya, who works mornings at a coffee shop and evenings as a part-time receptionist. Her combined pay barely covers a one-bedroom within city limits, so she and her partner rent a small place in a neighboring county. Each morning starts with a 45-minute drive just to pour coffee for students who can afford to live nearby. The city's rental supply hasn't kept pace with demand, especially as enrollment at the University of Florida continues to grow. New luxury complexes target out-of-state students with family support, while older, affordable buildings are converted or demolished. Local families who once lived close to work or school now face an impossible choice: pay more than half their income for rent or uproot to distant suburbs. Gainesville's story is no longer just about students hunting for a cheap room. It's about a city where the people who teach, serve, and care for others are being pushed out by rising costs and stagnant wages. The result is a community where the distance between work and home grows wider every year, and where stability feels further away with each lease renewal. Sarasota and Bradenton have become symbols of a new kind of housing crisis, one where luxury and local life collide. The median home price here now tops $500,000, making ownership a distant dream for many who keep the community running. According to the Sarasota Neighborhood Experts 2025 report, housing inventory has jumped 28% since 2019. More homes are sitting unsold, and for sale signs line streets that once promised stability. For teachers, nurses, and first responders, the reality is a daily commute that can stretch over an hour each way. Sarah, a registered nurse at Sarasota Memorial Hospital, leaves home at 5:30 a.m. to fight traffic from a rental she can barely afford in neighboring Manatee County. Her salary hasn't kept pace with rising costs, so buying a home near work is out of reach. She spends more time on the road than with her kids, and the exhaustion shows. The story repeats itself among public school teachers and firefighters. Local wages haven't budged, but the cost of living has soared. Many have given up on home ownership entirely, settling for long commutes and shared rentals. Meanwhile, high-end condos and waterfront properties continue to attract buyers from out of state, driving prices further from what most residents can afford. Infrastructure is strained by rapid growth. Roads clog with traffic as more workers are forced to live farther away. The gap between those who can buy and those who serve the city widens each year. Sarasota and Bradenton now stand as early warning signs, places where the dream of a stable, local life is being replaced by long drives and growing uncertainty. Pensacola's housing market changed overnight in July 2023 when new FEMA flood maps reclassified entire neighborhoods. For many homeowners, the news arrived as a letter. Your flood risk has increased, and so will your insurance. At a packed city council meeting that month, residents described feeling blindsided. Premiums that once hovered around $3,000 or $4,000 a year suddenly doubled or even tripled. One retired teacher opened her renewal notice to find a $10,000 annual bill, more than her mortgage and property taxes combined. The impact rippled through the community. Some families tried to raise their homes or pay for costly elevation projects, hoping to bring premiums down. Others canceled their policies, gambling that no storm would hit. But for many, the math just didn't work. Real estate agents reported a spike in for sale signs in the hardest-hit areas as homeowners scrambled to escape bills they could no longer afford. By the end of 2023, blocks that once felt lively had empty driveways and shuttered windows. State officials pointed to climate models and rising sea levels as justification for the new maps. Local leaders argued that the changes punished longtime residents who had done nothing wrong. Insurance companies, facing their own mounting losses, offered little relief. The result? A feedback loop where higher risk drove up premiums and higher premiums hollowed out neighborhoods. Pensacola's story is now visible in its vacant homes and abandoned lots, a warning of how quickly government policy, market forces, and climate risk can turn stability into uncertainty. On a humid morning in Jacksonville, a young couple stands outside the county courthouse, clutching paperwork for a foreclosure auction. They've saved for years, hoping to buy their first home in the city where they both grew up. The bidding starts at $340,000. Within minutes, a New York-based LLC enters the fray, driving the price past $362,000, well beyond what the couple can afford. The property goes to the corporate buyer, sight unseen. The family leaves empty-handed, another casualty of a market increasingly dominated by investors with cash to burn. Jacksonville was once billed as Florida's affordable alternative, a place where local families could still dream of homeownership. That image is fading. By 2023, corporate landlords and Wall Street-backed firms own more than a quarter of all single-family rentals in the city. Jacksonville Business Journal reports that these investors now control entire neighborhoods, reshaping the market in their own image. For renters, the consequences are immediate. Lease renewals that once meant a modest increase now come with a $675 jump, sometimes overnight. Landlords cite market rates, but the reality is a bidding war that most working families can't win. The numbers tell the story. Rents in Jacksonville have soared 50% since 2020, while median wages have barely moved. Local buyers find themselves outmatched at every turn. Cash offers, bulk purchases, and instant approvals leave little room for first-timers or families relying on traditional financing. The city's identity as a place to put down roots is slipping away, replaced by a sense of powerlessness as distant investors set the rules. For many, the question isn't whether they can buy a home, but whether they can afford to stay in the city at all. In Naples, the gulf between luxury and reality has never been wider. The median listing price now stands above $800,000, according to Redfin's latest figures. For many, that number is abstract, a marker of prestige and exclusivity. But for restaurant workers and hotel staff, it's a daily reminder that home is always out of reach. Maria, who waits tables at a popular bistro downtown, spends more than 90 minutes each way commuting from a shared apartment in a distant county. She leaves before sunrise, returns after midnight, and spends nearly a fifth of her paycheck on gas and tolls alone. Even if she saved for years, the insurance bill in a modest home in Naples, often topping $20,000 annually for properties near the water, would swallow more than she earns in months. The city's economy depends on workers like Maria, yet most will never afford to live in the place they serve. Just up the coast, Fort Myers tells a different story, one shaped by disaster and the slow-motion fallout that follows. Hurricane Ian struck in 2022, but the rebuilding process has stalled. Over the past 2 years, at least 7 insurance carriers have pulled out of the region or gone bankrupt, leaving families stranded with gutted homes and no clear path forward. At a neighborhood meeting in February 2024, Tempers flared as residents confronted adjusters about delayed or denied claims. For single parents like Danielle, whose house still sits stripped to the studs, there's no end in sight. She pays her mortgage each month, plus whatever insurance she can still secure, but the house remains unlivable. Relief funds trickle in, but never enough to finish repairs. On some blocks, blue tarps and boarded windows stretch as far as the eye can see, a silent record of promises unkept. In Southwest Florida, the limits of resilience show up in empty commutes and empty homes as the systems meant to protect families buckle under the weight of crisis. At dawn, Marisol parks her compact car in a shadowed corner of a Kissimmee lot, just a few miles from the Magic Kingdom gates. She pulls her work uniform from a duffel bag, changes in the back seat, and heads to the park's locker room for a quick shower before her 7 a.m. shift. Marisol earns $15 an hour as a Disney cast member, a rate that hasn't budged while median rent in Orlando has climbed 35% since 2022, now hovering above $1,800 a month. Her pay covers a gym membership for locker room access and occasional fast food, but not an apartment of her own. Most nights she sleeps in her car, sometimes pooling tips with coworkers to afford a motel room for a weekend, just to get a real bed. The hardest part, she says, is watching families enjoy the fantasy she helps create, knowing she'll spend the night in the parking lot. For thousands of Orlando's hospitality workers, the housing crisis isn't theoretical. It's a daily routine of hiding exhaustion, rationing meals, and hoping for a better break. The city's booming tourism masks a reality where the people making the magic can't afford a place to live, and the line between job and survival grows thinner every month. Tampa's streets hum with new arrivals, but for families who've called the city home for decades, the welcome is wearing thin. The average homeowner's insurance premium in Florida now tops $6,000 a year, nearly 4 times the national average. In Tampa, residents watch their bills climb by more than a third since 2020, with many premiums now exceeding $5,000 annually. City leaders point to population growth and a shrinking pool of insurers. But for the Martinez family, the numbers are personal. Their annual premium nearly doubled in 3 years, eating up savings meant for their son's college fund. Mortgage rates have also jumped, making it harder to refinance or move. For the first time, the family is weighing a decision that once seemed unthinkable, leaving the city where 3 generations have lived. Across Tampa, stories like theirs are multiplying. Lifelong residents scan real estate listings in Georgia or the Carolinas, chasing a version of stability that used to define Florida. The question now isn't just about affording a home, it's whether staying is even possible. In Miami, the gap between what homes cost and what people earn has grown into a chasm few can cross. The median price for a home now stands at $610,000, while the typical household brings in just $47,000 a year. National housing analysts call Miami the most unaffordable major city in America, a place where more than 70% of residents spend over a third of their income on rent or mortgage payments. For many, the only way to keep a roof overhead is to double up. In neighborhoods like Miami Gardens, it's common to find 3 generations sharing a single house. Grandparents in one room, parents and young children in another, everyone chipping in for bills that never seem to stop rising. The city's energy, its music, its food, its sense of possibility remains, but the cost of staying is relentless. Families who once dreamed of building a future here now measure survival in months, not years. The question on everyone's mind is no longer when the market will turn, but how much longer they can hold on. Florida now leads the nation with average home insurance premiums exceeding $6,000 per year, 4 times the national average, according to the Insurance Information Institute. This documentary has shown how soaring costs, stagnant wages, and investor purchases have pushed families and workers to the brink in cities from the Villages to Miami. Verified data reveals rent hikes of 35% or more in cities like Gainesville and Orlando, while over 70% of Miami residents now spend more than 30% of their income on housing. Despite years of policy debates and insurer exits, core questions remain unanswered. Will wages catch up? Can insurance markets stabilize? And how many Floridians will be forced to leave their communities? The facts are clear. Paradise is slipping out of reach for many as the cost of staying continues to outpace what most can afford. For thousands across Florida, the crisis is no longer about where to buy, but whether they can stay at all.